This is going to be about specific scenario. We are looking at increasing diversity in a think tank, the learnings from an apprenticeship scheme and other strategies. We are going to be in conversation with Elaine Kelly, Assistant Director at the Real Center of the Health Foundation, and Anne Raymond, an economist at the Real Center of the Health Foundation. So thank you very much. And thank you for being here. And of course, you do a lot of interesting research. You do research, very applied research in health. So you do actually employ a lot of economists. I think the health is one of the main sectors absorbing economies. So I have a question. Could you please tell us more about the research and the economic analysis for the long-term center of the health education? I believe due to the topic of research that you do, you actually manage to attract, for instance, a good proportion of female. That's very difficult in economics. As we said, we have 30% female, 70% male, but actually you have a good proportion of female. But you also have various initiatives aiming to increase diversity in your labor force. Could you talk a little bit about these ones?
Hi, Steffi. I'm just wrestling with tech a little bit because I'm on my phone because I wasn't able to get my camera to work. I think Anne has a presentation which she's going to share, and I'm going to see if I can get myself on my actual computer. Yes. So as we're in the think tank slot, so the Real Centre sits within the Health Foundation, which is a independent charitable foundation working to build a healthier United Kingdom. So that 1 second, open. So on my phone. So the Real Centre of the Health Foundation grew out of the previous economic team, which really focused on kind of NHS finances. We started in kind of 2018, officially launched in 2020, with the aim of kind of improving long-term decision making. So the problem that was highlighted was that health requires a lot of long-term investments, both in terms of people's health and in terms of investment in kind of in the health service and sort of capital and so on. But decisions were often made really short term, and often those were not the best ones in the long run. So we were originally called the Sustainability Research Centre, which they've all got a bit confused because it sounded a bit kind of environmental. So we changed our name to a very long title of Research and Economic Analysis for the Long Term, or REAL. We generally just don't bother with the acronym. We consist of an in-house team who works on different projects around both the supply and the demand for healthcare. We do a lot of work projecting because that's one tool to improve long-term decision making. So, for example, we worked with the University of Liverpool last year to produce a projection model based on kind of epidemiological principles of what morbidity levels of ill health might look like in 2040. And what that and then discuss what the implications might be for the health service, but also other public services. What would it mean for the labour force and that sort of thing? And there it was really useful to have a kind of economist toolkit and thinking through, okay, what's the model we're thinking of? Under what circumstances would an improvement in prevention result in reduced cost for the NHS, which is one thing that's often discussed. Yeah, so that the point of us is to really get to a point where decision makers have tools that enable them to make decisions, long-term decisions for the benefit of the NHS. Yeah, next slide. Thank you, Anne. So this is just examples of a few of our reports. We do things other than projections, but these are quite prominent. So the report I talked about in the middle, which actually Anne worked on, was a key part of, was really had a lot of attention over the summer. A few of us did quite a lot of kind of media tours talking about it, and we know that it was mentioned in the Chris Whitty's CMO report this year, and we know it's been taken on board board by government. So that's really what we hope to do, and the economists are really at the heart of that. It's important to do the thinking. So economics provides a toolkit which allows you to think through problems, and for example also does a lot of stuff, as well as a lot of works with CPRD, which is the GP administrative record, so uses a lot of the skills a lot of us have in terms of data analysis, and we have really great data. And in general in health you have lots of data, but the Health Foundation is been fortunate to be in a position to get access to really great data. Next slide. So that's what we are. So our team, we are a team of about 20, that includes both economists and program managers. We've also now got kind of academic partners, or they're separate in York, based in York and Oxford. The internal team, so all the three most senior, so me, assistant director, the other assistant director, and the director are all women. We do have quite a healthy proportion of senior women. I think it's changed quite a lot since I joined. I mean, partly it's that we went from a small team to a big team, and I think in lots of respects, the team is more diverse than it was, on many measures, than it was, 5 or 6 years ago. But obviously, there's always ways that we're on a journey. We've not completed that journey, and we understand that we do not yet reflect the outside world. I would say we've got, and we also, as well, we have people from different ethnic minority backgrounds. We also have people born from, I think I was trying to count how many different countries, but 5 or 6 different countries. And I would also say that Anne's going to be talking about it later, but we've also introduced, we've also taken on 2 apprentices, which has been really valuable. And that's obviously another aspect of diversity, bringing in people from different backgrounds in terms of their educational experience. Next slide, please. Successes. So yes, our diversity has increased. I remember there was a time towards the beginning where I needed to sit on every interview panel, because other than my boss, I was the only kind of moderately senior woman. And I don't have to do that anymore, which is really good. Mainly it's a show of success rather than that I don't, because obviously I love talking to people during interviews, and in positions of leadership. What have we done? I think one of the things I did, and that's partly reflects my bias, where I am in life, but we put explicitly on the job ad, we will consider all part-time working requests. I mean, in some ways you have to, right, because it's the law, but I think being a bit more explicit about that shows willing. And who knows, correlation, causation, it might have had no difference at all. We have had people, a lot of people take up that for actually completely different reasons. So sometimes for childcare, but other times for finishing PhDs. And I think with our senior economists, if we hadn't offered flexibility, we probably wouldn't have got, they wouldn't have joined us. So I think it's not just it's not just about offering opportunities for people with children. It's also, there's lots of different reasons why people want to juggle their lives, arrange them differently. I think we also are very intentional about the makeup of our interview panels. Going back to one of the questions, one of the responses to the previous conversation about CVs, that we didn't have CVs. I don't find it particularly useful, and I want to know the context. Some people have worked really hard to do what. But what we do is we work very hard to make sure that, in the constraints of what we have of who we have in the organisation, that both the people sifting the CVs and the people on the interview panel are as diverse as possible, on several different dimensions. And both because for a couple of reasons. One, I guess, is to make sure that we are making decisions that are taking into account different perspectives, and also to try and make sure that the candidates feel as comfortable as possible, and they are able to do their best. and sometimes that can make things a bit challenging. So, you know, sometimes it's a little bit Tetrisy, but it's worth it, and it's a benefit to both parties. So it's not, you know, while I think it's the right thing to do, it's also, I think, more productive. What are the challenges for us? Okay, we're a small organization. Who are the Health Foundation? We're the biggest foundation you've ever heard of, I guess. No, so people might not know what a think tank is, what a think tank does. Occasionally you might get the, you know, I've had I don't know if anybody else in the think tanks had this, where they, you know, people who have not heard of you say, well, why don't you just go and get a proper job like in government, where people are actually doing things as opposed to sitting around talking. And I guess that there's a question of pathway. Some people like a very stable pathway where they know this is what I'm going to do, then I'm going to, you know, then I'm going to get this qualification, then I'm going to be, you know, a partner or whatever. And it's not like that. That's true of all think tanks, I guess, unless you're going to spend your whole life there, which some people do, but not in, but people often, you know, branch out and do very different things. So health economics is quite a heterogeneous field. There is a subfield, it's very complicated. There is a subfield of health economics, which is not the same, which is slightly different. And they have slightly different backgrounds. So when you're looking at jobs in health economics, sometimes they can mean economists, and sometimes that know a bit about health, and other times they can mean, which is sort of me. And then there's other people who are who have a much greater depth of kind of clinical background, so offer other skills. So it's not that they're doing that, they do a lot of kind of cost effectiveness of particular interventions for NICE and things like that, which is also very useful, but they're slightly different things. And as I mentioned before, think tanks career pathways are not always maybe as mapped out as they are in, say, a university where you're a lecturer, a senior lecturer, and so on, reader. Okay, next slide. Right, I'm going to pass over to Anne now, who can talk about our apprenticeship scheme.
Thank you, Elaine. Hi, everyone. Yeah, so we have an apprenticeship scheme. And so the reason why we started that was because we were keen to increase opportunities for young people to get into economics. And obviously, the apprenticeship program is an alternative route to getting a degree in economics. And we also saw that as a way of attracting more diverse candidates. So we currently have 2 apprentices in our team, one in the first year, who just joined us like a couple of months ago, and one person in their 3rd year. And so they are encouraged to participate in all tasks that an analyst would undertake. So, you know, they have the same, quite similar. It's not that they are relegated to doing specific kinds of tasks in a way. We would expect them to do presentations to stakeholders, do analysis, like do writing of reports. So they would be involved in all of that. And so we think that this encourages young people to think of health economics as an exciting job field, because there is obviously a lot of, like, people don't really think of this as a viable career option. But also we want this to then equip our apprentices with the skills that they would need to progress as an economist, wherever they want to work. And so some of the steps we took to make the recruitment process sort of fairer and more accessible, specifically to our apprenticeship scheme. So we ensured that the job description, rather than saying that, oh, the candidates needed like XYZ skills, we focused more on things like, oh, you should be curious about the role, you should be enthusiastic about the role. So that was something that we did. We circulated the role through wider networks. So we used, obviously, like Discover Economics and other contacts that we had to ensure maximum reach. We offered advice on how to prepare for interviews. So the job description actually had a little bit of text which said, you know, focus on these things, like look at what summer jobs that you've done, you know, previous things that would be relevant. We shared the interview questions in advance with the candidates. And then we also made sure that we offered feedback to unsuccessful candidates. So these are just some of the things that we did to ensure increased diversity and make the process sort of more accessible. In terms of successes, so this is George, who is our 3rd year apprentice. So this is basically a video that he did for Discover Economics. So basically getting these kinds of opportunities, it's just, we thought it's just really great. And also the fact that I think we being within a think tank, and because we're producing sort of external facing reports, having your name, so you can see that George is a co-author on the right side on this piece that we did, which was covered by, for instance, Financial Times. It got a lot of media coverage. So again, getting that kind of opportunity at that stage, you know, of your life, which may be like other, if you went with like a conventional degree, you probably might not have those opportunities as much. So we think, yeah, that's really great. But we also obviously face challenges in the sense that, you know, during the recruitment process, because we are competing essentially with you know, candidates were thinking of going for a conventional university degree, that we do have a lot of attrition during the recruitment process, people dropping out once they get their A-level results. And it also means that, unlike, for instance, in the government, where they take in a large cohort of apprentices, we don't really have a big group. So for the last 2 years, actually, George was the only economist apprentice. So it could be quite challenging, for instance, when you don't have a big group that you can share your experiences with. Now, at least we have 2, so that's good. But that could be a challenge. And also, again, like Elaine mentioned, a lot of the problems, I guess, like we have in general recruitment, we also face with recruiting apprentices in terms of, is the Health Foundation visible and known to candidates, and is that like an attractive place to work in? And just quickly on some of the other EDI initiatives, so obviously we work very closely with Discover Economics. We are now actually involved in a mentoring program where we're mentoring undergraduate economics students. We have done lots of individual engagement opportunities with schools, again, both through Discover Economics and otherwise. And we have offered work experience opportunities within our team to students who otherwise, I guess, wouldn't have that opportunity. So yeah, so that's just a whistle-stop tour of what we've done in our apprenticeship scheme. So that's me. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Elaine. Thank you very much, Anne. That's very interesting. And I think this mirrors a lot what we were talking in the previous session. And it's about this idea that economics goes beyond banking and finance. But, you know, we have to work in trying to put ourselves out there and to show what economics are doing. And perhaps a question that I might have for either Elaine or for Anne, whoever wants to take this, what can we do in academia to emphasize this, that economics is great if a student wants to do finance, don't get me wrong. But what we learned from Stephanie's conversation before is that perhaps students believe that that's the only way to go. And so do you see there's anything that we can do to kind of emphasize the role that is not just finance, and we can do amazing work like the one you are doing with a degree in economics?
Do you want to give your experiences, Anne? I'll let you talk first. I always talk, and then I'll plug in.
Yeah, no, thank you, Elaine. No, that's a really good question. And I think Discover Economics, obviously, they're doing fantastic work in this space. And we have actually been involved in a lot of these events where, so for instance, I was part of this presentation at the Glasgow University, which was led by Sam and Discover Economics, where we got together around 150 students from different schools. And actually not all of them learning economics as well. They didn't really, not all of them had economics as a subject, but then just presenting what health economics is and what we at the Real Center do, and making it like quite interactive and interesting as well, because I think that's the important thing. Like if you want to tap into like students, you need to make it like interesting and applicable, not just some kind of like a dry subject with like, which is just theory, I guess. So yeah, so that was really, and I think we got some feedback about how, you know, a lot of students, I think there were surveys done which looked at, you know, how many students actually recognize this as a viable opportunity. And then that awareness sort of increased like after the event, which was like really nice to see. So I think it is things like this, just sort of, there's a lot of like myth busting that I think needs to be done in terms of, again, like you said, it's great if a lot of people want to go into banking and finance. Those are obviously like good career options, but then is it because that you know, are you aware of everything that's out there and you're still making that choice, or is it just because, yeah, so I think it's quite important. There is definitely a role for us to do, and that's what we're trying to do with things like the apprenticeship scheme and things like our EDI, other EDI opportunities.
Yeah, thank you, Anne. I was actually thinking as well that I wonder if there's a role for some of you guys at universities. So I mean, one of the reasons that I ended up going into kind of public policy and the areas that I've been interested in is various kind of lecturers that I had at university. And it's tricky because you guys have chosen this career path, but I guess there's a knowledge that not everyone is going to choose their career path. But if you're a labour economist or you're a health person or something, then I sort of feel that actually that there's also a case to be said, look, this is some really important stuff, and actually we need people at the frontier of the research, but we also we also need people to go out into the world and take what I'm teaching you. I guess as teachers, I mean, I've done a bit of teaching. One thing you really want to do is for people to take that knowledge and run with it. So I think there's a little bit of demonstrating how this research has been used, or how this mode of thinking has been used to really change people's lives. And I think that can really affect particular groups, like women, for example, just say, look, this is how this has changed. Yeah, so I think there's a role for that, actually. And I mean, my route into think tankery was actually because my undergraduate tutor handed me an IFS application in my second year of university and said, I think you should apply for that. If he had not done it, would I have taken a different route? I may well be in the civil service or something like that. So actually, I think you guys have a big role to play.
Thank you very much. That's very interesting. Sometimes we perhaps don't push students enough. And I do think students have amazing research skills, but sometimes in our academic mind, it's, oh, but you need to wait to do a PhD and then you start working on research. And what you are showing us is that that's not necessary. And that, if you move into these think tanks, you're going to get the support that you need to continue to do research in the private sector. I don't think we have questions from the audience. I just wanted to highlight Hyman's comment here, and to keep talking. I think it came out also in this conversation about the the use of CVs. There is a lot of ways to do this. Of course, I think we are just highlighting different ways. And Emma says that CVs, instead of using a CV, they just use an online form where people put the information that is actually needed for the work, such as, for instance, the education, that allows to compare candidates a little bit better. And then shortlisters just look at the marks. And I think that's similar to what you guys are doing, right? According to my understanding, that's what you are doing at the Health Foundation as well. What sort of application process do you ask? Do you ask people to apply for CVs? Do you look at the CV anonymously, or do you just have application form? We lost your voice, Elaine.
Yeah. So what do? We've tried a few different things. As I said, we tend to have a couple of screening questions of sort of, why do you want to work at the Health Foundation? What interest in health do you have? And so on. I would say we and as I mentioned, we make it explicit on there that you can ask for part-time working. We ask for a CV, and we ask for a cover letter, and sometimes some screening questions. And then during the interview, we have a mixture of kind of competency-based questions and kind of, why do you want to be here kind of questions, because I guess for us, motivation is really important. Now, it sort of depends a bit on the level as to how we do those different competency questions and what we're expecting. So as Anne mentioned earlier, for the apprentices, to ensure that everybody was able to prepare, that we leveled the playing field a little bit. We got them to prepare something in advance. Now, by the time you get to post-degree level or post-masters, we wouldn't be doing that. And I know that actually for other, not for economist jobs, and maybe no, actually, one thing that's quite, the more senior we've got, what we've started to do for the more senior roles is for those more senior people to run a workshop. So actually, it can be really good to see how they interact with the rest of the team, and to see how they make sure that they include everybody, principally kind of junior and senior people. And actually, the rest of the team have been really positive about that. And it's been really interesting when talking to those people, talking to the staff, feeding back from those workshops how they felt about them, how they felt about the candidates. Often it's reinforced what we've said, what we've felt, but it's also provided an extra aspect. And I think that's really valuable, particularly as they're going to be the hiring managers of the future, right? So if you're hiring people who are senior, who are going to be the hiring managers of the future, it's also important to see how committed they are to including everybody. So it's probably a rambling answer, but I think there was some content in there.
That's perfect. Thank you very much, Elaine. And I think this is a good way to end up things. So remember that when we are hiring people, we are hiring those ones who are going to be hiring in the future. And I think it's a lovely thing to end up this session and to think about this and think about how we are building up this pipeline. So thank you very much, Elaine. Thank you very much, Anne. Has been, again, very insightful. And I think, well, Stephanie already put in the chat, we have learned a lot about this and how perhaps help our students to support. And I think we have also learned a lot of things that we could take to academia.